So the role helps focus the AI on the relevant topics and avoiding irrelevant or off-topic answers. And then you give a number of steps that you want it to follow. Next, we're going to be learning how you can use ChatGPT to get the best possible answers. So we have a 6-step process. You may not need to use every step in every single chat. However, it can be useful to give you the best possible answers. So firstly, you want to give ChatGPT a role to tell it that this is the type of person you are, and this is going to help it give better answers. Next, you have the action, which is what you actually want ChatGPT to execute on. Then you give it context, so you give it, further information about how you want the answer to be structured, how you want it to sound, etc. And then you give it examples, so you might give it examples of previous text or information that you want it to use to inspire the answer that it's going to give. And then you give it structure and limitations. So you could say, I want it to include bullet points, or I want it to have paragraphs, or I want it to be written like a poem. You give it its structure, and you also give it limitations, which means you tell it what you want it not to do. So I don't want it to be more than 500 words. I don't want there to be any emojis. You tell it what you don't want it to do. After you get your answer, you give it feedback. So if the answer could be better, or you're not quite happy with the result, then you say, can you redo the answer, but include this or take out that.
So you're thinking, how can AI help my business? As an AI consultant, let me tell you that automation is the answer. Learn more below and book a call to get started.
Let's look at step 1. So firstly, you have to give ChatGPT a role. When you're trying to give it a role, think, what kind of person would be most useful in this situation? So when ChatGPT has a specific role, it's going to better understand the context of the conversation. The role is going to provide a clear guideline on what type of information and responses are necessary. So the role helps focus the AI on the relevant topics and avoiding irrelevant or off-topic answers. So for example, here I've given the role of, you are a friendly business expert with a speciality in e-commerce businesses. So if I had an e-commerce website and I was looking to create marketing material, I might say to ChatGPT, you're a friendly business expert with a speciality in e-commerce businesses. Because I'm an e-commerce business, I want someone that has a speciality in e-commerce. Because I need someone who understands business to the highest level, I would say you're a business expert. And you can also add a characteristic, which is going to impact the tone of the answers. So you could say a professional business expert. You can say a friendly business expert. You have to think about the type of tone that you want to come across within the answer. You could also tell it a specific person. So for example, someone who's an expert in e-commerce, Jeff Bezos. So you could just say, you are Jeff Bezos. And that's going to help you come up with a better result. Next, give ChatGPT an action. So you can have a simple action or a multi-step action. So the simple action is ideal for straightforward, quick tasks, and it's good for when you need immediate output. You don't want to wait too long to get a result. And if you want targeted and specific content. So for example, a single action might be, write a compelling and engaging Instagram post to promote our new line of eco-friendly water bottles. Simple, easy, okay. Then you might give a multi-step action. So I want to create a social media campaign. So instead of creating a post, you're creating an entire campaign. This is more complicated. To promote our new product, a handmade eco-friendly water bottle. Follow these steps. And then you give a number of steps that you want it to follow to give a more detailed, complex answer. So if you want something more detailed and complex, the multi-step action is going to be your bestie. Right, next we're going to provide context. So if we're selling this eco-friendly water bottle, we need to give it more information about the water bottle in order to come up with this marketing post or marketing campaign. So, for example, you might tell it about the product, you might give the brand values, you might tell it the target audience, the product launch details, and the brand tone. These are always going to result in a more detailed and personalized answer. So, for example, if you said, I want you to create a social media campaign to promote our new product, a handmade eco-friendly water bottle, and you didn't give it the steps, then multiple people could give the same instruction and we get very similar answers. But when you give it this more detailed information, which applies specifically to you and your business, you're going to get a more unique result, which is how you're going to get something that doesn't look like it's been generated by AI. Next, you may want to give examples. So these are examples of previous Instagram posts which you think are good posts. This is going to allow ChatGPT to understand the type of words, the type of structure, the type of formatting that you like in a post, and it's going to use that to improve the answers and the results that it's going to give you. Step 5, you need to provide structure and limitations. So telling it what you do want. You want it to be an attention-grabbing opening. You want to highlight the product or service. You want a value proposition, you want a call to action, and you want a hashtag. You don't want too many emojis, you don't want too much punctuation, and you don't want irrelevant hashtags, and you want it to be under 150 words. These are all telling it things that you don't want. Also, you might say to it, don't use specific words. So ChatGPT has a tendency to reuse a lot of the same words like streamline, revolutionize. You might tell it, don't use these words, because that just makes it really obvious that it's produced by AI. And realistically, you don't want your customers to know that you're using AI. You want it to sound very personal. So that's why you have to give it as much instruction as possible to give the best answers that sound more personal, they sound more human, because the more human input you give is the more human the output will be. And lastly, give feedback. You will help to improve the accuracy, increase the quality, and it will improve the learning of the text generation model. So if you have a chat, it will remember information from previous answers and previous conversation you've had within that same chat. So it will improve the future answers within that same chat. If you move on to an entirely new chat, then it's not going to remember the information from the other chat. It will only remember the information within one chat. So the more feedback you give it is the better information you're going to get within that chat. But what you should be aware of is eventually it gets to the point where it's like your chat is full, you need to start a new chat. That's why sometimes it's useful to create your own GPT. If there's consistent information that you want it to remember, you need to create and train your own GPT in order for it to remember it across multiple chats. Okay, now it's your turn. So what I want you to do is I want you to go into ChatGPT, either create an account or log into your existing account. Firstly, I want you to write a very simple prompt like, generate a social media post about an eco-friendly water bottle for Instagram, and see the result you get. And then after we get that basic result, we're going to try the same thing but using the steps we've just learned. While you do that, I'm going to show you how to do it as well.
So you're thinking, how can AI help my business? As an AI consultant, let me tell you that automation is the answer. Learn more below and book a call to get started.